Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. I'm Will Robinson Smith. I'll be performing our commentary for the duration of this coverage. We're broadcasting, as we always do, from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. This is, of course, take three for SpaceX in trying to launch the Astra 1P satellite on behalf of one of its oldest commercial customers, that is Luxembourg-based communications company SES. Taking a live look right now at the Falcon 9 rocket, continuing to wait patiently at Pad 40, Space Launch Complex 40, over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. SpaceX, at this moment in time, is currently targeting the liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket at the beginning of a launch window that opens up at 5:35 p.m. Eastern, 21:35 UTC for our friends joining around the world. As long as SpaceX has not started fueling, though, the launch window does extend out to about 2 hours and 49 minutes from the 5:35 starting point. And naturally, weather will continue to be top of mind today for the launch teams, as it has been a struggle to launch this rocket amid what is beginning to be an active tropics season. Now, while we are not directly dealing with a named storm here directly in Florida, there is an area that the National Hurricane Center is watching that does track towards the northern part of the state as well as southern tip of Georgia. 45th Weather Squadron, as they're tracking the launch weather for today, forecast about 60% odds of favorable weather at liftoff at the start of the window, and that deteriorates down to, or excuse me, that improves to other direction. That drops to 40% chance of go weather toward the end of the window. Some of the primary concerns for today, according to meteorologists, are the cumulus cloud rule, the possibility for anvil clouds, and it's always keeping an eye on the lightning possibility. As you can see here, American flag continues to blow quite persistently as we look at one of our cameras pointing back towards NASA's Vehicle Assembly Building, VAB. It is not nearly as blustery a day as the last time we were with you for live launch coverage earlier in the week. But as you can tell with our bouncing camera and with that flag shot there, things are still just a little bit blustery. So we're now T-minus 54 minutes, 54 seconds and counting. SpaceX will also be keeping a close eye on the booster recovery weather as well. 45th Weather Squadron forecast that as low on a scale of low, medium, and high risk possibility. So hopefully that has not changed since their launch weather forecast was issued yesterday. Brevard County EOC has activated and supported this launch as they always do. So teams continue to move towards that 5:35 launch time. And again, as long as they have not started fueling, they can slide into their window if needed. As we go ahead and get things started on this evening, want to thank the little more than 2,000 of you who are joining with us live. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that like button. Allow some folks to find their way into our live coverage as we continue to roll along. Certainly want to give a shout to our wonderful moderators in the live chat, helping to keep things kosher and allow for robust exchange of ideas and conversation as we continue on through the count. I see Callistia Lee is here with us right now. It's a little late for Stephanie B down there in Australia. maybe just a little bit early, actually. Just looking at the clock, it should be uh, just about 20 to 7 a.m. where she is. So she may be popping in here at some point. Also keep an eye out for our other friends, Astro Jen and Astro Joe, as well as Rusty Shackelford. We're also powered by a wonderful channel member community here on YouTube. So thanks to folks like that Martin guy, Jeff Hansen, Craig RS, that Opal guy, Paz Maria H, David Ortiz, RRR, Jimbo Indy, and many others. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop.spaceflightnow.com, access to member-only videos here on YouTube, and the ability to watch all of our liftoff moments from here at the Cape in 4K. I'll also mention, speaking of member-only videos, if you had an opportunity to catch the Rocket Lab launch earlier this afternoon, they launched their 50th Electron to date, a very key milestone for them. Very celebratory mood down there at the Mahia Peninsula in New Zealand. Rocket Lab's Electron becomes the fastest commercially developed rocket to hit that 50 launch milestone. So big congrats to Rocket Lab. I bring that up in this context, one, because obviously we're Spaceflight now, and that was a mission that launched earlier today, but also within the context of member-only videos. Before the 50th launch, we did have the opportunity to speak one-on-one with the CEO and founder of Rocket Lab, that is now Sir Peter Beck. We'll have that interview up in its entirety for our members a little bit later on today. Also working on a video that we'll post later on this evening as well, giving a recap and catching us up to how Rocket Lab was able to reach that 50 launch milestone with a good chunk of our conversation in there as well. So that'll go out to the public, but for the members, they'll get the whole thing. So now's a good time to join our channel membership, but also to subscribe to Spaceflight now. Turn on notifications, ring that bell, and that way you'll be notified not only when those videos post, but also when we start these live streams. Last but not least, you can use the YouTube Super Chat feature. If you have a comment or a question, your comment or question is appropriate to be read on the show, we'd love to bring you into the conversation about this launch or things happening in other parts of the realm of space. And not only will you be helping to support what we do here at Spaceflight Now, but you'll also give us some interesting things to talk about as we continue to cruise on through the countdown. Now, T-minus 50 minutes and counting. We have our eyes on the rocket live, of course, but we'll also be capturing some launch photography if the rocket is able to lift off this afternoon as well. Photographers Adam Bernstein, Michael Caine, out and about getting ready to shoot the rocket. Adam, of course, also getting ready to track the rocket live if SpaceX is able to launch this afternoon. If you're not already, you can follow their work on X, Adam Bernstein at ABurnNYC, Michael Caine at MD Caine Jr. You can find Spaceflight Now simply at Spaceflight Now. And if you're not on X, you can also follow us on Facebook and Threads as well. We also have tracking support from Chuck Briggs, whose camera view you're looking at right now, and our friend Pete Carsons with Max Key Productions will be joining in a little bit later on in the broadcast. And making sure the technical operations of the broadcast run smoothly, our editor of Spaceflight Now, Stephen Young, is holding it down on that end. We're now T-minus 48 minutes, 47 seconds and counting. We're just about 10 minutes away from the point at which the SpaceX launch director will need to make a call on the start of propellant load. So before we get to that point, let's go ahead and run through the countdown timeline, let you know the milestones that we're anticipating as we continue to step on through the count today. Assuming that go ahead for prop load is given, fueling starts at the T minus 35-minute mark with two events simultaneously. RP1, a rocket grade kerosene, is loaded on board the Falcon 9's first and second stages. At the same time, liquid oxygen is loaded on board the Falcon 9's first stage. T minus 16 minutes, second stage LOX load begins. But before that happens, we'll see the so-called big vent from the strongback. Happens as the feed lines are being chilled. Comes around at about T minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds. T minus 7 minutes, the Falcon 9 chill down of the 9 Merlin 1D engines gets underway. That involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, and it helps protect the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. About 6 minutes before liftoff, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. Then at T minus 4.5 minutes, the strong back retract sequence begins. Starts with the clamp arms underneath the payload fairings opening up, and then the transporter erector, the strong back, will recline about 1.5 degrees away from the rocket. It stays in that position until liftoff, at which point it pulls back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. About 3 minutes out, the first stage LOX tank should be full. Oh, I don't know if you caught what looked like a deer scampering through the foreground of that shot. That was nifty. Anywho, T minus 2 minutes, the second stage LOX tank should be full, at which point the Falcon 9 will be fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. The propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director will give their go for launch at 45 seconds out. The engine ignition command is issued at T minus 3 seconds. If all 9 engines ignite and are healthy, the flight computer will give the command for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 for a T0 liftoff. Currently set for 5:35 p.m. Eastern, 21:35 UTC, or in other words, in T minus 46 minutes and 2 seconds. Currently T minus 45 minutes, 5 seconds and counting. On board this Falcon 9 rocket is a geostationary satellite on behalf of SES. So before the rocket launches, let's go over the flight path of this vehicle. Talk a little trajectory, shall we? The rocket, once it leaves Space Launch Complex 40, otherwise known as Slick 40, it'll be flying out basically due east once it leaves the pad. SpaceX has a trio of drone ships, but as you can see on the screen, the one on deck tonight is just read the instructions. The fairing halves will be jettisoned a little bit downrange of the map you see here as well. SpaceX has 2 East Coast recovery vessels to scoop those up. The one on tap tonight is Bob. In the other vessel, Doug, of course, named after former NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley, the demo that flew aboard the Demo 2 mission back on May 30th of 2020. Taking a look at the launches so far on the year. As you can see right now, SpaceX with the most recent Starlink mission from Vandenberg Space Force Base, currently tied with the total number of launches that it achieved in all of 2022. Once this launch goes ahead, or whenever the next Falcon 9 rocket does launch. They will have surpassed that milestone well on their way to eclipsing last year's total record as well. We are, of course, continuing to keep an eye on the wind conditions here. But so far, things are seeming to continue ticking down towards a 5:35 p.m. liftoff. We will, of course, let you know if and when that changes. The call on the start of propellant load will be made in just about 4.5 minutes from now. We're now T minus 41 minutes, 4 seconds and counting. Just taking a look at the live chat here. Want to thank the more than 3,200 of you that are with us right now, 3,300, excuse me. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that like button to allow some more folks to find their way in to our live coverage this afternoon. Also want to welcome Adam for joining us with channel membership at the mission specialist level. Welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. And a thanks to previous channel member Ricky Moore for gifting $1 super chat. Really appreciate that. As we await the call and the start of prop load, that poll coming up in just about 2 minutes from now, let's talk a little bit about the payload on board the Falcon 9 rocket. Of course, this is an SES mission. In fact, the launch of this spacecraft here, we'll go ahead and pull in some video right now. This will be SpaceX's 12th dedicated mission with SES. Having first launched SES-8 back in 2013. SES also an important customer for SpaceX and putting a lot of faith into the company. The SES-10 mission was the first reflight of a Falcon 9. And most recently, they launched the third batch of mPOWER, O3B mPOWER satellites as well. We're taking a look here on your screen. This is the Astra one-piece satellite that was shipped over from Thales Space, brought here to Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in preparation for the launch, hopefully coming up in just about 39 minutes from now. It'll be heading up to one of the most important slots in geostationary orbit for SES, that being the 19.2 degrees east position. Currently, there are 4 satellites that are hanging out at that slot. Those are Astra 1KR, Astra 1L, Astra 1M, and Astra 1N. And this satellite that's on this Falcon 9 rocket currently, Astra 1P, is set to replace them all. First two were manufactured by Lockheed Martin. The second built by a company called Astrium, which was acquired by Airbus Defence and Space. Following this mission launch, there will be an additional Astra satellite that will launch in the coming years. That is Astra 1Q. Their full capability, according to SES, will be brought online by, I believe, 2028. We're currently at T minus 37 minutes, 38 seconds and counting. At this point, SpaceX will have taken the poll if they are in fact ready to launch at 5:35 p.m. Eastern. So we'll stand by for further updates from them. But again, the fueling process will begin T minus 35-minute mark. And here's what we'll be looking for. We should see some evidence of liquid oxygen load should become apparent by about the T minus 33-minute mark. And where we're going to be looking on the Falcon 9 rocket as we're gazing at the vehicle from our friend Chuck Briggs' camera vantage point. If you see in the center of your screen, and Chuck is kind enough to zoom in for us right now. Thank you, Chuck. You see that pole that's just to the left of the Falcon 9 rocket in the center of your screen, right about at that point. If you look at the top of that pole and then bring your eyes immediately to the right of the Falcon 9 rocket, that's about the area where we'll start to see frost lines start to form once that super cold densified liquid oxygen is loaded on board the first stage tank on the Falcon 9. Fortunately, we're not seeing a lot of heat distortion this afternoon or early evening, so some of the vapor that forms in that part as well should be fairly apparent. Although it is bright and it is essentially a white tinted vapor, so maybe a bit hard to see, but we'll be keeping a close eye on that part of the rocket for developments on fueling, assuming we have not heard word directly from SpaceX at that point. Now, T minus 34 minutes, 39 seconds and counting. We do have word from SpaceX within the last minute that, quote, all systems are looking good for today's launch of the SES Astra 1P mission. Propellant load is underway. Here's the key bit. Weather currently favorable for liftoff. So certainly a good sign from SpaceX as they, at this stage in the process, sound confident in their ability to launch in a little less than 35 minutes, just about 34 minutes now at this point. Again, if you're just joining us, we do have word that SpaceX has in fact begun prop load on the Falcon 9 rocket that you see here live on your screen. A couple different angles that we're looking at here. On the right, the thinner box is the Falcon 9 from our vantage point here at the press site. The big box is from our friend Chuck Briggs' camera, positioned over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, taking a look at the Falcon 9 from the backside of the transporter erector. So now that SpaceX has begun fueling the Falcon 9 rocket, they are committing to trying to make a launch attempt at 5:35 p.m. Eastern, 21:35 UTC. Coming up in less than 2 minutes now at about the T-minus 30-minute mark, teams will start loading cryogenic helium onto the pressure vessels for the Falcon 9's first stage. That helium is used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. That same process will begin on the Falcon 9's second stage about 5 minutes later. We're now T-minus 29 minutes, 40 seconds and counting. Assuming all goes well with this Falcon flight, this will be SpaceX's 347th Falcon 9 launch to date, and their 290th reflight as the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. As we are counting down towards the start of the big event, which will come up at about T-minus 20 minutes, 20 seconds, let's take a moment to review the booster history for this particular first stage booster, tail number 1080 in the SpaceX fleet. This will be the ninth launch of this particular booster. Its first mission began by sending humans up to the International Space Station on Axiom Space's second private astronaut mission, that being Axiom or AX-2. That flight was commanded by Axiom Space astronaut and former NASA astronaut Peggy Whitson. She was joined by fellow American John Schaffner in the pilot seat and two mission specialists from Saudi Arabia. In fact, not too long ago, Peggy Whitson was involved in an integrated test of the SpaceX Starship, a mock-up of the part of the crew portion of the vehicle that will be used for the Artemis 3 mission. They were running a test coordination with Axiom Space, SpaceX, and NASA, making sure that the models of the spacesuits were able to work well with that Starship mock-up, looking at the hatch as well as the hangar or the elevator that'll be used to bring the astronauts down to the lunar surface. Coming back to this mission, the next launch of this booster came on July 1st, 2023. That was the launch of the European Space Agency's Euclid Observatory. This is a wide-angle space telescope designed to better understand things like dark matter and dark energy. Flights 3 and 4 were both Starlink missions. Those were Starlink 6-11 on August 27th and 6-24 on August 22nd. The fifth flight was another Crew Dragon mission. This time around, that was the Dragon named Freedom, the fourth and most recent Dragon vehicle to enter into service. This mission was commanded by former NASA astronaut, current Axiom Space astronaut Michael Lopez Alegria. Mission lifted off on January 18th, 2024, making Mike LA the first person to fly twice on a Dragon capsule. He will be joined soon enough by Jared Isaacman, the commander of the forthcoming Polaris Dawn mission, having previously served as the commander of the Inspiration 4 all-civilian astronaut flight. Sixth launch was a Cargo Dragon spacecraft that headed up to the ISS on CRS, or Commercial Resupply Services 30. That cargo run was notable, of course, because it was the first time that a second-generation Dragon spacecraft headed up to orbit, lifting off from Pad 40. And the most two recent launches, both Starlink flights, Starlink 6-52 on April 18th of this year and 6-62 on May 23rd. That brings us to the Astra 1P mission for SES. Coming up on that 25-minute mark, which is when they'll start loading cryogenic helium onto the pressure vessels on the second stage of the Falcon 9. Taking a look at the live chat, I see AstroGen has popped in this afternoon. Good to see you, AstroGen. Hope you're doing well. And thanks to the now 6,000 of you who are joining with us live. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that like button. Allow some more folks to find their way into our live coverage. And while you're here, let us know from where you are happen to watch this launch from. Always great to see where folks are checking in from around the world. Glad you're doing well, Astrogen. Good to hear. Looks like we've got some folks from Southern California, Ottawa, Canada, not too far away, Melbourne, Florida, Cape Coral, Vermont, Voss, Norway. A lot of folks from Florida, some Virginia people in here, New York, Houston, Minnesota, Georgia. Fabulous. We're now T minus 21 minutes, 40 seconds and counting. Currently, we're just about a minute or so away from the start of the so-called big vent. Would be a good indication that fueling is continuing on time and on track. I want to thank Pete Caldwell for the super chat. Really appreciate that, sir. Hope you're doing well this evening. And you see here at T minus 20 minutes, 16 seconds and counting, the big vent clocking in right on time. Again, the big vent occurs as the feed lines are being thermally conditioned prior to second stage liquid oxygen loading. This venting process will wrap up at about T minus 16 minutes and 30 seconds. LOX load on the second stage starts just about 16 minutes on the dot before liftoff. Now T minus 17 minutes, 47 seconds and counting. Less than a minute and a half remaining on the big vent before that wraps up and second stage LOX load begins. As you may have noticed, it has been an uncharacteristically quiet period for launches here on the Cape. Is a combination of some technical challenges as well as poor weather conditions, both here as well as out in the recovery zone, have made it difficult for SpaceX to proceed with its planned launch cadence. In fact, we've gone 15 days without a launch, a little more than 2 weeks now. SpaceX hoping to snap that quiet period streak. Now, just a little less than 16 minutes or 17 minutes from now, launch of this Falcon 9 rocket. A few days after that, they hope to send up that batch of Starlink satellites, the Starlink 10-2 mission that began the quiet period. Looking like that Falcon 9 will launch Sunday at the earliest, but that may push to Monday, depending on how quickly they're able to turn around this launch pad. As you see, the big event has wrapped up, and we're just now less than 20 seconds away from the start of second stage LOX load. Now, T minus 14 minutes, 46 seconds and counting. As we are cruising on in towards liftoff of the Falcon 9. First off, I want to thank the more than 9,000 of you who are now with us live this early afternoon or late afternoon, early evening. Sure to hit that like button if you haven't already to allow some more folks to find their way into our live coverage. That would be greatly appreciated. While we still have some time, let's go ahead and talk about the workhorse vehicle for SpaceX that will be launching this mission. That, of course, is the Falcon 9 rocket. Stands at 70 meters or 229 feet tall, has diameter of 3.66 meters or 12 feet. Most of that is, of course, made up by the first stage of the rocket. This particular first stage, tail number B1080 in the SpaceX fleet, going for its ninth launch today. At the base of the Falcon 9 are the 9 Merlin engines, which burn rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen, producing 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Around the engine compartment are the black carbon fiber landing legs that are used to land the first stage on the drone ship. Again, today they're using just read the instructions. Above the first stage is the inner stage. This is a composite structure consisting of an aluminum honeycomb core surrounded by carbon fiber. The image on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see the deployable hypersonic grid fins. These are titanium winglets that provide stability and steering for the Falcon 9 as it comes back through the atmosphere tail first, like a big old dart towards the drone ship. At the top of the inner stage are 3 mechanical latches that attach to the second stage. First stage main engine cutoff. High-pressure helium is used to release those latches. 4 pneumatic pushers ensure clean separation. Second stage engine nozzle is also housed safely inside the interstage adapter until stage separation. Speaking of that second stage, the upper stage of the Falcon 9, powered by a single modified Merlin engine called a Merlin vacuum engine, or an MVAC engine. It's equipped with a large nozzle, which is optimized for burns in the vacuum of space, hence the name. Produces more than 200,000 pounds of thrust. It will be fired twice on today's mission, placing the Astra 1P satellite on its way to that geostationary transfer orbit. Following satellite deployment, it will ignite for a third time to drive that upper stage back into the atmosphere where it will burn up, helping to eliminate the risk of any unnecessary space debris on this mission. At the top of the rocket are the payload fairings that encapsulate the Astra 1P satellite. Fairings are made up of a carbon composite material, and they're 13.1 meters or 43 feet tall, 5.2 meters or 17.1 feet in diameter. The two halves of these fairings will be recovered a little further downrange from where first stage lands on the drone ship. They gently splash down into parachutes. Again, SpaceX will use the recovery vessel Bob to scoop them up out of the ocean, bring them on back to Port Canaveral, where they're transferred to Cape Canaveral and ready for another future mission. SpaceX is working to certify its booster and its payload fairings for up to 40 missions each. We're now T minus 10 minutes, 30 seconds and counting. According to SpaceX, both the Falcon 9 rocket itself and the payload both currently healthy. They're still tracking about a 40% chance of violating weather conditions. So, in other words, about 60% go conditions at this point. They're still continuing to keep an eye on the weather, but they say that currently things are looking favorable. Taking a look at the Falcon 9 rocket from the pad view from SpaceX as well. Just want to know a little bit of housekeeping here. You can see our countdown clock is a little bit different than what you see there from the SpaceX feed. Our clock is in real time. The time you see there in the bottom center of the big box here coming in on a slight delay. So we'll be making our primary callouts based off of real time. Just want to point that out to you so you can keep that in the back of your mind as we continue on through the count. Taking it back here at the SpaceX feed, here's a live view of drone ship. Just read the instructions that will await the landing of B-1080 about 8.5 minutes after liftoff. Currently T minus 8 minutes and counting. Now less than a minute away from the start of the engine chill down sequence. We'll flow a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps in those 9 Merlin 1D engines and prepare them for ignition. Now, a little under 8 minutes. Taking a look at the live chat here, want to thank a few more folks for your support this early evening. Thanks to Mr. Owen Goober for a $5 super chat. Really appreciate that, Mr. Owen, who says, this is very cool. I have a handwritten note from astronaut Shane Kimbrough, which is fantastic. Shane Kimbrough, for those who may not recall, most recently flew to the International Space Station as the commander of the SpaceX Crew 2 mission. He was a flight engineer during Expedition 65/66. He performed 3 spacewalks on that particular mission. For those who were not with us earlier in the broadcast, want to go ahead and just give you a quick overview on where this Falcon 9 rocket is going to be headed, since we often get the trajectory question in the live chats. Let's go ahead and hit that one more time. They'll be launching this satellite to geostationary transfer orbit. So once the Falcon 9 rocket leaves Pad 40 or Space Launch Complex 40, Slick 40, at the Cape, it'll fly essentially due east, heading out and away from Florida Space Coast. That first stage booster B-1080 set to land on the drone ship. Just read the instructions. 2 fairing halves will be jettisoned a little bit downrange. The map you see here on your screen. They float down underneath the support of parachutes. Here's an image of what that looks like. They're gliding down to splash down in the ocean. They're brought aboard one of the recovery vessels. Today, they're using the one nicknamed Bob. We're now T-minus 5 minutes, 6 seconds and counting. We're just about 30 seconds or so away from the point at which the strong back retract sequence will begin. That'll start with the clamp arms underneath the payload fairings opening up, and then the transporter erector, or the strong back, will recline about 1.5 degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. Stay in that position until liftoff. Taking a look at pad view of the Falcon 9 rocket. Just wanted to bring this view to you briefly so you can get another angle on what the cloud cover looks like. Gives you a little bit of a better overall idea of what SpaceX is tracking this early evening. We do have the call out that the strong back retract is currently underway. As you see the clamp arms opening here in the SpaceX feed, we'll take a look at Chuck Briggs' view. The strong back pulling away ever so slightly from the Falcon 9 rocket right now, as we're now less than 4 minutes away from the liftoff of this Falcon 9. Hoping to snap a period of 15 days where there has not been a launch from the Cape. Looking to break that quiet streak in just about 3.5 minutes. Before we hit that point, though, I want to thank a few more folks for your support. Thanks to Alberto Alves for a 27.9 our dollar super chat. Really appreciate that. Checking in from Sao Paulo, Brazil, which is fabulous. Michael Marquez with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Michael, who says, hey, thanks for doing what you do. It was a last second scrub a couple missions ago. Did they ever say what happened? Thanks. They did not give any specifics as to what happened. That was on the Starlink 10-2 mission. SpaceX director of launch, though, did note that it was a technical issue that required them to roll back to the hangar and address the hardware. So Do have a call out that stage one LOX load is complete. Looking for second stage LOX load, wrapping up about 20 seconds. Also want to thank Don Pierce for a $2 super chat. Thank you, Don. And Hunter's Run Adventures for the $10 super chat. Thank you, Hunter's Run, who's watching from Daytona International Speedway today. Good way to spend an afternoon. We are now 2 minutes away from the liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket. Appreciate the now 20,000 of you who are with us live in our last couple of minutes here. Sure to hit that like button to allow a few more folks to find their way into our live coverage. So we're getting ready to see what should be very lovely late afternoon, early evening launch of the Falcon 9 rocket. Falcon 9 now fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. Seeing the ground gas closeouts here. Commentators say that the weather remains green, that they're tracking no issues on the Falcon 9 rocket. We are now about the 45-second minute or second mark. It's waiting for the SpaceX launch director to give their go for launch. Now 30 seconds out, we have the call from the SpaceX launch director. We are go for launch. So now just about 20 seconds away from the liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket from pad 40. 15 seconds. And here we go in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket on SES's Astra 1P mission. The Falcon 9 has cleared the tower. Now a little more than a minute into flight. Falcon 9 is approaching max Q, point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. Falcon 9 now traveling faster than the speed of sound as it approaches max Q. Here's that call out. Coming up on a number of milestones in the next minute. T plus 2 minutes and 31 seconds. See main engine cutoff on the first stage. That'll be followed 4 seconds later by stage separation. Then second stage engine start at T plus 2 minutes 42 seconds. That'll be followed a little bit later than we're used to seeing, but the payload fairings will be deployed at T plus 4 minutes and 27 seconds. Now a little more than 2 minutes into flight. About 10 seconds to MECO. This view is from our friend Pete Carstens. with Max Key Productions. And there's Miko, stage separation, and SES-1. And there, those events on the SpaceX feed as well on the right-hand side of your screen. Some great views from the onboard cameras as well as our tracking team here on the ground. We're just about a minute away from fairing deployment. That's coming up at T plus 4 minutes and 27 seconds. There you see the fairings have been deployed. Nice glimpse of the fairing halves just to the left of the Merlin vacuum engine for a moment. Also got a quick glimpse of the Astra 1P satellite. Coming up in now less than 2 minutes, we'll see the first stage entry burn begin at T plus 6 minutes, 25 seconds. Now a little more than 5 minutes into flight. Depending on how obscuring the cloud cover is, we may or may not be able to capture the first stage entry burn with our ground tracking cameras. If we are able to spot it, we will, of course, bring that to you, but it is both bright and cloudy, so it may or may not be feasible to see from the ground, but our cameras are scanning the skies for it. A little more than 5.5 minutes into flight. Taking a look up through the inner stage on the view on the left-hand side of your screen. Continuing to see a good burn on the Merlin vacuum engine as well. Now a little more than 6 minutes into flight. We're just about 20 seconds away from the start of that first stage entry burn. Entry burn should be beginning now in real time. See it coming up on the SpaceX feed momentarily. Yeah, it looks like we're not going to be able to see it through the clouds from the ground. Here's the view of the entry burn, though, from the onboard cameras from SpaceX Falcon 9 first stage. That booster hitting the brakes as it continues to make its way back through the atmosphere, a little more than 7 minutes into flight in real time. There's the conclusion of that entry burn. Coming up next, the landing burn will begin right about the same time that the second stage engine will cease firing, both of those happening about 10 seconds after the 8-minute mark. Now 8 minutes into flight. Landing burn beginning in real time now, but the time you're looking for the visual is from the SpaceX feed, so we're now less than 10 seconds from seeing that. Landing burn underway. Eyes on the drone ship. And a confirmation of what you see on your screen. The first stage booster, now for a 9th time, is back down on the drone ship. Just read the instructions. This mission marked the This was the 320th booster landing to date. So unlike a Starlink launch, because this is a customer mission, SpaceX is actually going to be sticking with these live camera views. So as long as we're still able to bring this to you on the Falcon 9 second stage, we will stick with this broadcast. Appreciate you hanging with us at this point. Just a little bit past the 10-minute mark. Here's what we're looking at coming up. The Merlin vacuum engine will reignite for a second burn, SES2, or second stage engine start number 2. That's coming up at T plus 26 minutes, 38 seconds. That burn will last until T plus 27 minutes, 37 seconds. And there will be a cutoff of that engine once again, setting up the Astra 1P satellite to deploy on behalf of SES, T plus 34 minutes, 48 seconds. So a relatively short mission here. And again, this is the 12th dedicated launch on behalf of SES, one of SpaceX's oldest customers to date. Taking a look at the live chat, want to thank the folks who've been hanging through with us, patiently waiting for this mission to go ahead. I just want to thank Mel Roberts Harold for a $5 super chat. Good to see you this evening, Mel. Who says, so glad to get to watch, listen, and learn. Thanks all of y'all that make up Spaceflight Now, and to the cool folks that gather here together. Yes, we have a wonderful community here. Lots of great conversations in the live chat. And as we're watching the progress of that upper stage of the Falcon 9 rocket, now is as good a time as any. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to Spaceflight Now here on YouTube. It's free, quick, and easy to do so. Just hit that subscribe button. Be sure to click the bell icon. That way your notifications are turned on and you'll get alerted when our live streams begin and when we post new videos, as we will a little bit later on this evening, marking the 50th launch of Rocket Lab's Electron rocket. One of our channel members, Tony Milanix, asking when the next launch is. We're anticipating it no earlier than possibly this Sunday, that being the launch of the Starlink 10-2 mission, Falcon 9, that had the T0 scrub back earlier this month. Of course, we'll keep a close eye on if SpaceX is ready to move forward with that launch. And be sure to keep an eye on our launch schedule over on our website, spaceflightnow.com, for further updates on that. Guessing it may be breakfast where Alco RL is with the $3 super chat. First off, thank you for the support. Sounds like Algo has waffles on the mind. Certainly one of my favorite breakfast food items. Back for my birthday, my wife got me a 4 mini waffle maker, which is fabulous. It's not a product endorsement, so I'm not about to name drop the brand, but it was very, very sweet gesture, as I'm also a big fan of waffles as well. So I'm right there with you, Algo. Again, where we are in the mission, if you're just popping in, we're at T plus 14 minutes, 36 seconds and counting in real time. 14 minutes, 26 seconds from the SpaceX feed, coming in on a slight delay. We're just about 12 minutes away from the reignition of the Merlin vacuum engine at T plus 26 minutes, 38 seconds, less than a minute burn, which will set up the Astra 1P satellite to deploy at T plus 34 minutes, 48 seconds. Taking a look back at the pad here, as you can see, and actually I'll go to this zoomed in view for just a moment. But you can see the transporter erector is now back upright there at the pad. This is part of SpaceX's process of turning around its launch infrastructure as quickly as possible in hopes of launching as soon as they possibly can. We're also preparing a launch replay, so stick around and we'll have that ready in just a few moments here. Currently T plus 17 minutes, 6 seconds and counting. Sure, it's been a busy day for many folks out there, so may not have been paying attention to the calendar at the moment, but it is officially the summer solstice. So I want to wish everybody a happy start to the summer here in the Northern Hemisphere. Hope you'll have some fun plans for the summer period. Those who are out of school and able to go on holiday or go on vacation. Hope you've got some fun trips planned. I'm sure many folks will be heading to Central Florida for one theme park or another. Be sure to try to make some time if you're able to pop over this way and be sure to check out a rocket launch in person. Lots of fun things to do over here on the Space Coast as well, in addition to a rocket launch. Not least of which is our wonderful beaches that go up along the coast of Brevard County. Now T plus 19 minutes, 55 seconds and counting. Taking a look at a launch replay from the vantage point of Chuck Briggs, who was tracking the rocket from over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Of course, this was the 12th dedicated flight by SpaceX on behalf of SES. Most recently, it launched a pair of O3B mPOWER satellites for the company. As you can tell, it was a fairly cloudy day. Once you really start to bring your gaze above the launch pad here at the Cape. So a bit tricky to track the rocket, but fortunately the bright glow of the plume was mostly able to help keep Chuck on track here. Appreciate it, yeah. Now T plus 21 minutes, 41 seconds and counting. Taking a look at the telemetry map here on the right-hand side of your screen, the second stage of the Falcon 9 rocket currently cruising over the west coast of the continent of Africa. Now, just about 4 minutes away from the start of that second stage engine burn, which will last less than a minute, setting up the Astra 1P satellite to deploy T plus 34 minutes, 48 seconds. Now T plus 24 minutes, 40 seconds and counting. Just about 2 minutes away as we are getting views now back from the second stage of the Falcon 9 rocket. Now T plus 25 minutes, 43 seconds and counting. Less than a minute away to the start of the second stage burn. Now T plus 27 minutes, 9 seconds and counting in real time. See that second stage engine burn currently underway. Currently T plus 29 minutes, 3 seconds and counting in real time. So you saw a good burn of that second stage engine now in a coast phase for the next several minutes. Satellite deployment for SES is coming up at T plus 34 minutes and 48 seconds. While we're waiting for that, let's go ahead and hit one of our other launch replays. This from the vantage point of our friend Pete Karstens with Max Q Productions. Fortunately, from Pete's vantage point down in the Vieira area, little bit further south than we are here at the press site. There was not quite as much obstruction with clouds, and of course, there were still some, but able to keep good eyes on the rocket for quite a bit longer. SpaceX continues to toggle between camera views on the Falcon 9's upper stage, between keeping eyes on the Merlin vacuum engine and occasionally bringing us a glimpse of the payload on board. Look at the underside of that Astra one-piece satellite. Of an odd and obstructed view for a fairly large payload. That's why it's kind of hard to get the full picture on it right now, but once it is deployed, we'll hopefully get a little bit better view. Right now, that upper stage is traveling at a speed of about 35,000 kilometers per hour at an altitude of just beneath 530 kilometers climbing. Great job by Pete capturing the moment of separation. That second stage engine ignition one, SES 1. Now coming up on about 32 minutes into flight. You can see those fairings falling away. Pete's launch replay video here, reflecting the glow of the sun. Great views. They're just about 2.5 minutes away from the satellite deployment. As we wait payload deployment, coming up in just a couple minutes now. Taking a look at launch photo at liftoff from other photographer Adam Bernstein here at the press site. Of course, if you want to check this out later, you can always follow him on X, formerly known as Twitter. He's at ABurnNYC. Our other launch photographer, Michael Kane, at MD Kane Jr. We're now T plus 33 minutes, 25 seconds and counting in real time. You're just about a minute away from the deployment of that satellite. We are coming right up on the point of satellite deployment. Television satellite getting ready to deploy momentarily. And just a little bit of a visual change. We did hear call out from SpaceX that the satellite was successfully deployed. As we go ahead and get our mission stats ready. Before we come into our stats and close things out, I want to thank a couple more folks for your support this evening. I want to welcome first Steve Sanford, excuse me, for joining us at the pad leader level. Thank you, Steve. I want to thank Sandy Speak for a couple of $5 super chats. Thank you so much, Sandy. Really appreciate your support tonight. The good liftoff and landing of the Falcon 9 first stage booster. Let's go ahead and take a look at where our mission stats now land this evening. This was the ninth flight of this particular booster, tail number 1080 in the SpaceX fleet. This was SpaceX's 347th Falcon 9 launch to date. This was the 62nd Falcon 9 launch of 2024. The 290th Falcon booster reflight, or the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. So SpaceX's 64th overall launch of the year, including two test flights of its Starship rocket from Starbase in southern Texas. This was the 117th SpaceX launch within the last 365 days, the 192nd orbital launch for SpaceX from Pad 40, and the 247th overall orbital launch from this pad as well. With a good liftoff today, that brings SpaceX up to 62 launches on the year. Moving on to some recovery stats, this was the 84th landing on the drone ship. Just read the instructions. That makes this the 251st SpaceX drone ship landing so far, and the 320th overall booster landing to date. Finally, with some industry stats, this was the 45th orbital launch from Florida so far this year, the 66th from U.S. soil. This was the 72nd orbital launch from U.S. rocket company. Actually, that's a typo. It should be the 73rd, including the Electron rocket from earlier this afternoon, making this the 118th orbital launch from around the globe. 3 mishaps. Here's where our pie chart stands. Again, for the US, that should be 73 missions on the year. And with a good liftoff from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, the launch drought of 15 days has now been snapped. Of course, it also gave SpaceX the opportunity for the first time to launch back-to-back missions from Vandenberg Space Force Base. So a nifty opportunity for the folks out in California. And we'll roll merrily along into our next launch opportunity, looking for the Starlink 10-2 mission to lift off. Again, no earlier than Sunday. But be sure to keep an eye on our website, spaceflightnow.com. Click on the launch schedule for further updates. We'll let you know if and when that changes. I want to thank our folks who support this launch coverage. First off, to the wonderful moderators who've been helping us out in the live chat. Thanks to Callistia Lee, Astro Jen. Oh, Astro Joe made his way in here. Good to see you, Astro Joe. Also, thanks as always to Stephanie B and Rusty Shackelford as well. I want to thank Pete Karstens with Max Q Productions and Chuck Briggs for helping to track the rocket this evening. Thanks to our launch photographers, as always, Adam Bernstein and Michael Kane. Our editor, Stephen Young, here with Spaceflight Now, managing the technical aspects of the broadcast. And most importantly, thanks to you for wherever you're watching from around the world. Be sure to click subscribe on the way out the digital door if you haven't already. And we hope you enjoy the start of the weekend and a happy belated Juneteenth to all of those here in the United States. Mark this relatively new formal federal holiday, but an important point in American history. And with that, that'll go ahead and wrap things up for us today. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others, and we will see you next time, folks. Bye-bye.